Hello and welcome back to the GB Fantasy Football channel. In today's video, we're going to be looking at attack versus defence. All out attack or big at the back. Which one will get us the most points throughout the season, throughout the campaign? Where best to put our funds, and is it potentially viable to go for that 5 million draft? Now, if you saw the subscribers, me rating the subscribers draft in yesterday's video, you'll know full well there was a draft in that video which it showed it is capable. But before I go any further, I'd like to thank you all for the support on the channel. We've passed 650 subscribers and it's the road to 1000 now. Can we push as far and as close to it as possible before the season starts? I'd be greatly appreciated if you could hit the subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up as well. It pushes the content out to each and every one of you who are looking for this kind of stuff, for the Sun Dream team, for the FPL, and do drop the bell on it as well. Without further ado, let's crack on with the video. So as mentioned in the introduction, today we will be looking at attack versus defence, where best to put that 50 million. I keep getting it mixed up with 100. It is 50 million budget on Sun Dream Team this season. Now, a lot of us will be looking at those snazzy assets up front, the Haalands, the Salahs of the world, but we'll also be looking at the defence, thinking, can we eke out an extra 0.5 million here and there to go from perhaps a budget enabler to maybe a European option so we can save a transfer for future game weeks. Now, after doing a bit of digging data-wise, in fact, actually, before I go any further, the league code for my Sun Dream Team League will be just under my camera, so please do go check it out. Join if you want. There's plenty of us over there now. It's getting bigger and bigger by the day. It will also be in the description down below. So if that's what you'd like to join, come along and we'll see how big we can get the community over there. But back to the data. I've been looking at a bit from last season over the first 4 game weeks. So that's game week 1 to game week 4. And it's an interesting one. It really is. Now, there's going to be a graphic on the screen. I don't know whether it's going to be both or split into 2. I'll go for split into 2 at the minute. So we'll break it down across 2 slides. First off, we're going from Arsenal to Leicester. We're going for the top half of the league alphabetically and then towards the bottom as well. So as you can see, the graph is red and green. Red meaning the team did not get a clean sheet. Green, of course, meaning they achieved a clean sheet in that fixture. This is the 24-25 campaign. I was surprised, I can't lie. So first up, you can see that only 2 teams on the first slide managed to get more than, or at least 2 clean sheets in the first 4 game weeks. And that was Arsenal and Brighton across them. This is strictly Premier League data, of course. There is a slide coming up for attacking data later on in the video that has the League Cup second round involved as well, but this is strictly Premier League clean sheet data. Arsenal got off to a great start, 3 clean sheets out of 4, Wolves at home, Aston Villa away and Tottenham away. Now, if I remember rightly, the Tottenham away and Aston Villa away clean sheets were extremely lucky. A David Raya double save where it bounced off the bar from Ollie Watkins, and we went to Tottenham pretty much dug in for the entire game, won 1-0. Didn't have a number 10. I think Odegaard was out injured after the international break. But they was very lucky. Now, of course, you can look at this data and go, some of the clean sheets might have had a deflected goal, or sorry, some of the clean sheets that got wiped out might have had a deflected goal or a silly defensive error. So it can swing both ways. But the stark contrast between red and green really did surprise me. Brighton 2 clean sheets, Everton away and Ipswich at home out the first 4. Chelsea picked up a clean sheet away to Bournemouth in game week 4, and Ipswich was the only other team in the top half picking up a clean sheet, surprisingly, away to Brighton. Now, many of us, well, I would say Arsenal defensively, assets nailed on pretty much for points. The only other team that would look at and go, yeah, they're really good at the back would be perhaps Nottingham Forest. Sells kept the Golden Glove last season, joint with David Raya, and I'd say Liverpool as well, the Premier League champions from the last campaign. And this would suggest that an early start, an early clean sheet start that is really important. There'll be a slide at the very end that shows just how intriguing the point spread can be with regards to defenders and attackers early doors and where that money should really be put. But Brighton getting 2 clean sheets, didn't expect it, but it does show with Everton away and Ipswich at home, targeting potentially attacks that struggle to get lots of goals or attacks that just struggle to click into gear early doors. I think Nottingham Forest might be one that we actually do or probably should attack at the start of the season. They've only scored one goal in the entirety of pre-season. Yes, they did exceptionally well last campaign. They're in the Europa League currently, but it doesn't look like it's clicking over there, and they might be a big team that we could target for those clean sheets. And Ipswich, would we have ever thought that they had one? So that is the first part of the clean sheet slide. On the second part of this draft, we do see a bit more green compared to the top half. A few more teams picking up clean sheets spread across the board. Liverpool being the standout. They didn't concede a goal in the first 3 games of last season. Ipswich away, Brentford at home, and Manchester United away, which has historically been quite the bogey ground for Liverpool, as it has many a team. Nottingham Forest at home, of course, that was one of their few defeats in this season. Hudson-Odoi, cracking goal. Man City picking up a clean sheet on the opening day away to Chelsea. Now, I remember this one as an Nkunku disaster class being brought off after just an hour, but that's mainly for FPL reasons. Ipswich at home conceding shockingly, West Ham away and Brentford at home. Just goes to show the clean sheets aren't exactly where we always think they're going to be. If you look at that set of 4 fixtures for Man City at the start of last season, you'd actually say it would be flipped the other way round. You'd expect a clean sheet in the 3 that they actually conceded, and Chelsea away being the most difficult one, you'd expect them to concede. So it is always look at the draw when it comes to clean sheets. Man United picking up a clean sheet on the opening day to Fulham at home. Once again, I think there was a few moments in that game, if my memory serves me right, where Fulham really should have scored. Brighton away, Liverpool at home, sorry, and then Southampton away. So they picked up 2 clean sheets out of the first 4 last season. Once again, targeting those promoted teams. Even on that slide, you've got Southampton, 3 out of the first 4 games. They didn't score, and that's just from Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, and Manchester United. Newcastle picking up a clean sheet on the opening day last year at home to Southampton, but conceding against Bournemouth, Tottenham, and Wolves. I think Newcastle were actually down to 10 men for an awful lot of that game. Tempted to say I captained Isak, as a few of us did. Forest only 2 clean sheets out of the first 4, which is not surprising considering they did indeed go on to have the joint best defensive clean sheet record in the league last season. Clean sheets away to Southampton and surprisingly away to Liverpool, but conceded in both their home fixtures. Southampton no clean sheets at all. In fact, they struggled for points the entire campaign, which is why they are now in the Championship. Tottenham conceding away to Leicester. Really surprising, first of all. At home to Everton, it was 4-0 win, easy clean sheet, and it did really set a precedent for Tottenham going forward in the season, only keeping a clean sheet once out of the first 4. Of course, they struggled in the campaign. Pedro Porro was one of the standout assets in the season, but that wasn't due to defensive data. That was chances created, bonus points, attacking returns. West Ham 1 clean sheet out the first 4 away to Crystal Palace, which once again is very surprising. Palace did start the season exceptionally slow though compared to the heights that they reached at the back end. Of course, qualifying for Europa League technically, but currently in the Conference League, picking up silverware for the first time in their span as a club, beating Manchester City, of course, and Wolves not keeping their clean sheet at all in their first 4 games. Arsenal away, Chelsea at home, Forest away, and Newcastle at home. Really tricky 4 fixtures, but it tells me straight away across both these graphs. I think there was only 18 clean sheets registered in the first 4 game weeks in the Premier League. Now that is surprising. Of course, you do have to factor in the League Cup in the second game week for clean sheets. It's a bit trickier to find a defensive asset that plays 60 minutes, especially in that League Cup game. A lot of managers, if they do play them, tend to either bring them on at half time or take them off. I think the exception last season was Munoz. I'm not sure if Gay played for Crystal Palace in that fixture, but I know Munoz was a consistent asset throughout all competitions cup-wise last season, whether it be League Cup or FA Cup or, of course, the domestic league. Liverpool assets, it was a decent start last season, but it just goes to show target teams that don't have the potential to score too many goals. I know it sounds easy to do, and I know it sounds like something that we all should be doing anyway, but instead of targeting the players, target the fixtures. if we can combine the both, I think that's where the points are going to be had. You think about people on the first day, I think Everton have got Leeds. Is there a clean sheet potential there? I think there will be. Burnley, Sunderland in the second game week. Will one of those two teams keep a clean sheet? Of course, Burnley had a decent, but an exceptional clean sheet record in the previous campaign. So there are points to be had clean sheet wise, but these slides tell me that defensive options shouldn't be picked just for clean sheets alone. We need to be targeting those bonus points. We need to be targeting those extra points, tackles wise, attacking wise. If we can get someone like a Munoz for 3 to 3.5 million again, like he was priced last season, can we find the new version of him this season going into the 25-26 campaign? That's where the money's going to be at. That's where we can get those 0.3 price rises as soon as possible. And I think that's what we need to do. Let's move on to the attacking data. The graphic on the screen shows the number of goals scored between game week 1 and game week 4 in the 24-25 campaign. Of course, both data for defensive and attacking wise need to be taken with a pinch of salt. Of course, these teams have evolved since then, perhaps have even gone backwards in some cases, but these are just a rough guide on exactly what we should be targeting and what our realistic expectations should be. Arsenal only scoring 6 goals in the first 4 fixtures. Aston Villa 7 goals, Bournemouth 5, Brentford 7, Brighton 10. Of course, Burnley weren't in the league last season. Chelsea 8, Crystal Palace 8, Everton 7, and Fulham 6. Now, the data across both the first slide and second slide for attacking wise will have the promoted teams in. Of course, this is the 24-25, so I've switched them out for the relegated teams such as Southampton and co. Now, on this slide, of course, some of the teams do have 5 fixtures in those first 4 game weeks, and it's good to see. Of course, these across the board are potentially decent. Carabao Cup wise, I think Bournemouth had a game, Brentford had a game, Brighton had a game, Crystal Palace had a game, Everton and Fulham. Now, personally, Fulham, I had Anthony Robinson last season. He was great for tackles, but he didn't really get much of a look in the early cup competitions. Palace were the team that thrived. I believe they won either 3 or 4-0 in their opening fixture. And of course, they went on from second round, third round. I think they got knocked out to Arsenal in the Carabao Cup, but FA Cup wise, they went on to win it. But they were the team, they were the placeholders that we was all looking at throughout the campaign. The blueprint, as you will. Palace players played throughout every game, pretty much every minute. Yeah, Eze's, Mateta bar his injury, Munoz, I think even Henderson played the majority of the fixtures as well, despite having backups in the campaign. Brighton, of course, you've got players like Matoma, you had João Pedro there last season, Danny Welbeck, Evan Ferguson. And Brentford, a lot of people had Mbeumo at the start, hoping that he would get that double. He did not, I don't believe. Johan Wissam, not sure if he played, but these are the reasons why we're looking for those double game week players in game week number 2. Of course, Manchester United are thrown into the mix this season, so they are one to look out for. They're normally a team that tends to play stronger teams. We're waiting to see what the draw will be for that competition. If a team such as United draw another Premier League team, you can expect a stronger lineup going into that fixture. Aston Villa and Arsenal on this slide. Chelsea, they were all teams that had European fixtures, so I believe they only had the 4 games up until this point. But only a few teams ticking into that green category. So you're looking at what, an average of 6 over the first set of data, 6 or 7 goals per team over the first 4 games. I think that's where we need to spread the load rather than doubling up on a team or focusing too much. You can't. I personally believe you don't or shouldn't have more than 2 from one team attacking wise. You're cutting your nose off to spite yourself at that stage, and it's just not worth it. There are teams this season. I think Aston Villa are a squad that have a really good fixture run at the beginning. So maybe someone like a Marlon, if he's guaranteed for minutes, which potentially he might be, Morgan Rogers went off with an injury in their friendly tonight, so that's one to look out for. Ollie Watkins has started pre-season exceptionally well, but will he play in the Europa League for Aston Villa? I'm not too sure, but that is the first part of the attacking data. Second part, of course, consisting of Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester City, Manchester United, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, Sunderland, Tottenham, West Ham, and Wolves. We've got two promoted teams on here, of course, this season. Didn't play in the last campaign, so not applicable data, unfortunately. Liverpool with 7 goals over the first 4 game weeks, which did surprise me actually. I thought they'd scored more than that, especially given a certain Egyptian's points tally at the start of the last campaign. Manchester City being the only team across both graphics to earn the dark green code. 11 goals over the first 4 game weeks. Now, of course, many of us would have had Haaland, many of us would have had Salah. I was in the lucky position last season to start the season with both of them. And it just goes to show Manchester City scoring 4 more goals than Liverpool over the first 4 game weeks, an extra goal per game. Yet, surprisingly, spoiler alert for the next section of data, Salah actually kept pace with Haaland quite consistently over those first 4 game weeks. So it just goes to show how much the burden was left upon Salah at the start for goal contributions. Manchester United only scoring 5 out of the first 4 game weeks isn't a surprise, considering I think they only scored 44 goals or so in the entire campaign of the Premier League last season. Yes, they got to the final of the Europa League. They did okay in the FA Cup. They knocked my team out in the third round, but they really lack goals. This season, however, with Mbeumo, with Cunha, and it looks to be Benjamin Sesko as well. Fernandes may be playing a deeper role in midfield. It looks like they've got a lot more firepower, so their assets, perhaps if they get through the second round of the Carabao Cup, which you would expect them to, there'll be a third round of the Carabao Cup within the first 6 game weeks, I believe, if the fixtures fall in the way that I think they do. Man United assets could creep up price-wise in a similar manner to what Matheus Cunha did last year for Wolves. Whenever you try to pick him for a cup competition, because he did so well in the league, you turn around and he'd certainly be in that premium price bracket value. Newcastle with 7 goals in the first 4 games. Yeah, they're sending off in the first fixture at home to Southampton, which of course would have scuppered the chances of potentially getting 3 or 4 in that game. Nottingham Forest with only 5 fits the bill for the rest of their campaign. Chris Wood carried the burden an awful lot, exceeding his goal expectations throughout the campaign. Only 5 goals though, which is a little callback to that last slide. I actually think Forest are going to struggle again this season for creativity. Their manager seems to be sticking with that philosophy of possession doesn't mean we lose a game. He will be happy to win a game with 30% of the ball, and that might actually hinder him this season. I think there's discussion with Igor Jesus, if I've got his name correct, the new signing this season, sharing minutes a lot more with Chris Wood and maybe even dropping Chris Wood to the bench at times. Sunderland not in the league. Tottenham only 6 goals in the first 4 game weeks. Surprising considering personally I'd associate Tottenham with scoring quite a few but also conceding quite a few over the last campaign. They wasn't solid at the back, but you'd always assume that they've got a goal in them. So only 6 out of the first 4 was a surprise. I think that does include the 1-0 loss in the London derby against Arsenal. They probably should have scored in that game, let's face facts. West Ham with 6 goals, that includes the double game week, I believe, and also Wolves with only 6 goals. It just goes to show, and this is more for my FPL as well, because I don't currently have a Manchester City asset in that either. But it just goes to show how well Man City do indeed start a Premier League season. Now, for those of you who, in the draft video yesterday where I was rating your drafts and your current teams, not many had Salah and Haaland as a double up front. I think going without Haaland in August is a scary, scary prospect. Manchester City are well renowned for quick starts, blowing teams away, especially those promoted teams if they manage to fall into that month. Ipswich last season, I think Haaland scored back-to-back hat-tricks against Ipswich and West Ham, so he also carried the burden with regards to goals in August. Can you go without one of them two? I know it's 15 million out of the 50 million budget, but I think they're quite essential. I really do. Going without them could prove a really problematic thing. If they go off at the start of the season, it's going to be hard to claw the points back. But if you were in the lucky position where you go without one of them and you luckily pick the one that does really well and the other one stutters and splutters at the start of the campaign, you're zooming off ahead of the people and you have got that ground already and you're going up in the leaderboards. Personally, I think it's a gamble too far, and it just goes to show what sort of attacking threat Man City really do carry. Their campaign last season wasn't great, but they always have that capability within them to score 3+ goals in a game, even hitting 5, 6 against teams. Whereas I think only Liverpool only carry that threat amongst the other teams in the league. Arsenal certainly don't at the minute. Maybe Manchester United can blow a few teams away. Newcastle won't at the minute, they're struggling. So I think getting a few Manchester City attacking assets is quite needed. And the last slide on today's video truly shows the power that attackers have over defenders at the start of the campaign. As you can see from the graphic, the usual suspects are at the top, with a few interesting names just popping up here and there. Erling Haaland, 7.5 million in the last campaign, 59 points scored in the first 3 game weeks. So all these points are game weeks 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1 to 3. I'm not counting on that. It was picked by 33%. I actually think these might be the statistics for this season, selection wise. I thought Haaland was a lot higher owned last season, so I might have to double check on that one. He was averaging 19.7 points a game for the first 3 game weeks last season. That is immense numbers. Absolutely incredible. And this is what I mean. We'll talk about Salah's now. He only had 45 points in the first 3 game weeks, an average of 15 points. Just incredible numbers. Picking up, what's that, 90, 104 points between them two alone out of the first 3 game weeks is an incredible start. If you go without one of them two and they replicate the form from last season, it's going to be such an uphill battle. And when you look at the Premier League as a whole currently, they are the 2 players with such explosive nature. Just, I suppose Cole Palmer would be the third one that fits into that category of, you could look at him and he'd score a hat trick or 4 goals in a game and you wouldn't bat an eyelid, because they are the ones that can produce magic in a single moment like that. I think Saka's more of a workhorse. He'll pick you up a goal, he'll pick you up an assist, and he'll pick you up some bonus points, and he'll plod along nicely. But 45 points in the first 3 game weeks for Salah. Luis Diaz as well sneaking up there. He picked up 35 points, 11.7 points average over the first 3 game weeks. Of course, he's now gone to Bayern Munich, so he's not an option. But does that potentially open up a slot for Cody Gakpo over on that left-hand side? Isak doesn't look like it's going to be done anytime soon. So that worry about Ekitike going to the left might be delayed a few weeks if you're only planning short term. Of course, Florian Wirtz can play on the left, but I actually see Cody Gakpo, bearing in mind his pre-season form has been pretty decent, starting on the left-hand side. Can he replicate those DS numbers for the price that he is? Perhaps. Bukayo Saka, 6.5 million apparently last season, 34 points, 11.3 points average per game at the start of the last campaign. Eze is an interesting one here. The numbers don't quite fit onto this slide, but from what I remember, I think he played 360 minutes. So he played the full 90 across all 4 fixtures at the start of the last campaign, which was 3 Premier League and the Carabao Cup second round game. 34 points, 8.5 points per game, but the majority of those points from memory came in that second Carabao Cup round fixture. I think he got a goal, maybe even an assist in that game. He did really well for bonus points, and it carried his Premier League form, which wasn't too great. Cole Palmer, 32 points, 10.7 points average at the start of the season. I think a few games after this was when he got his hat-trick against Wolves in that 6-2 victory. A few notable names on there, Jared Bowen. I can't remember if he did play in that double or not, but if not, 7.8 points average over the first 3 game weeks was really good. And of course, Dwight McNeil, course, the Dream Team Professor's favourite player right there. Scott, that one's for you. He did really well at the start last season. He was in and out of his team. It was a bit of a fun time for him, which did make for decent viewing. 7.8 points average across the first 3 game weeks, but once again, there was Everton's cup game, I believe, where he flourished in that second round. Noni Madueke, Brian Mbeumo, and I know he didn't play in that second round, so all them points were from his Premier League fixtures alone, which just goes to show how much of a fantastic asset Brian Mbeumo was. Unfortunately, he's now gone to Manchester United, so things like penalties and set pieces will be taken off him. I think at some stage during the campaign he will be an asset that sneaks into our squad, but currently I'm steering away from him. Semenyo sneaking onto the list with 29 points over the first 3 game weeks, and Heung-min Son surprisingly with 28 points in the first 3 game weeks. Now I actually thought Son had a horrible campaign, but that's probably just bias from me. I brought him in towards the back end for a double game week for Tottenham. I think he played 58 minutes in one of the games and didn't even play in the cup, so bit sour grapes when it comes to selecting Son in this fantasy format. But what is the one thing you can see from that graph that isn't on there? The first 3 game weeks, they're dominated by attackers. Not one defender or one goalkeeper throughout the first 3 game weeks sneak onto there. I think for game week 4, a couple of the Arsenal players managed to sneak into that top echelon points wise. I think Gabriel and David Raya snuck up there. But it just goes to show what it takes to get a defender or a goalkeeper into those points brackets was 3 clean sheets. Now that is an awfully big ask. When you look at the graph from previously in the video earlier on, clean sheets are hard to come by. They're just so hard to pick up. And if you're not picking up a defender that has all assets, is a bonus point magnet, you're really dependent on clean sheets. And from the graphic on the screen, they're just not there. They're not value for money. Now, I understand getting a premium defensive asset in if you want them set and forget for the European games that are to come from, I think it's game week 4, game week 5 onwards. I get that. Good for price points. But can you skimp out at the back? Can you potentially go with a full back line of under 4 million players, including the goalkeeper, and push those funds into attack to really bolster your points tally in the first few games and get that big boost going forward? I think that may be the play. Do you want 3 incredible premium assets at the back that are just draining all your funds? I don't think that's the case at all, and the graphic shows just that. And that concludes today's video. I hope you've enjoyed having a breakdown of big at the back versus big in attack. It is always one to look out for. It's fresh on my mind because obviously in the other Fantasy Premier League format in FPL this season they've brought in DEFCON points and it's changed the way that you look at the game. Players like Tarkowski and Murillo and Milenkovic, these centre halves that basically throw away and throw themselves in front of the ball are suddenly coming into people's drafts. So coming back to Sun Dream Team and seeing those same players like Van der Ven and Colwill, where I mentioned in people's drafts yesterday when I was breaking them down, I just don't see value for money in those kind of players. Even your incredible defenders like Frimpong and Kirkes, your premium assets at the back, I don't see value for money, especially in the first 4 game weeks. I think you've got to put it in attack and hope the players fire away and smash the goals in the back of the net and just start like a house on fire, basically. And I think that is the takeaway from today's video. If you have enjoyed, do drop a thumbs up and please do hit the subscriber button. As I said at the start, trying to get towards that 1,000 mark now, maybe even before the start of the campaign, but that might be a bit of a long shot. Leave a comment down below on how your teams are shaping up, and if this video today has indeed helped out your draft. Have you taken a bit of money out of the defence and put it maybe into a new attacker? That'd be interesting to hear. The league code for my Sun Dream Team will be in the description down below. Also, my socials will be down there: Instagram, X, TikTok, all that good stuff. So please do go check it out. But that's it for today's video, I'm afraid. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll be seeing you in a new video very soon.